a lot of you are French speakers, right? So I can do it in French, but you mentioned you have some English speakers. So I'll do a little bit of both. Let me begin in English. Let me thank Dr. Carl Gilbert, a good friend of mine, for inviting me to come to this colloque. I was moved when I first read the premises of the colloque. And one of the things that touched me the most was the fact that this was a Haitian event. I have been to many, many, many conferences and events, but they were staged by foreigners for Haitians. So I thought this was something that was really out of the ordinary. And I thought, well, I need to support Dr. Gilbert in this endeavor. Of course, the fact that it is a Haitian-sponsored event means that the expectations perhaps are higher. And so it's incumbent upon us to make sure, as the mistress of ceremonies have repeated over and over, to make sure that we respond to the occasion, to make sure that we deliver. So it's going to be tough, it's going to be difficult. As all of you know, prior to the earthquake, Haiti was really going through some extraordinary times, extraordinary challenges. The socioeconomic indicators of Haiti were dire at best. After the earthquake, as an economist, hear testimonies from our friends from Haiti telling us schools went down with student nurses in a country where we know provision of health care was a problem. When we hear that so many physicians have died during the quake, when we know that statistics tell us there are thousands of Haitians for every physician that is practicing in Haiti. So it is a very difficult situation. And of course, we're not going to change it overnight, but certainly we can engage in a conversation and see how we can move forward from this day on. One of the things I think when Dr. Gilbert asked me to talk about the role of the private sector and certainly the diaspora in healthcare provision and reviving it, I was thinking, well, it is a commendable thing to do. At the same time, how can really, and my good friend Edwin Patterson is there, how can a group of people from the diaspora show up in Haiti unannounced? I know that was done after the quake, but if we were to really engage in what's happening in Haiti, there is going to be a need for some formal structures to be put in place. Whether it is through the healthcare, whether it is through the agricultural sector, whether it is through any sector that you can think of in Haiti. And such a structure is not a difficult thing to do or to put in place. Certainly the Minister of Diaspora would have to play a lead in that. Other countries have done it, and it has worked. So there's a reason why, for example, after what happened on January the 12th, we couldn't have, on a regular basis, on a rotational basis, hundreds, if not thousands of healthcare professionals visiting Haiti on a given week. Spend a week, come back, another 1,000 goes, come back. This could be done. But certainly we have to have a structure in place to facilitate it and accommodate it. And right now, when I look at Dr. Serena, Dr. Larson, and the Reverend Parisot, I know the spotlight is on them, but they've told us they have no resources. Somebody was mentioning that our entertainer, you know, palais a tombé, bureau d'État a tombé. It is true. It is true. And these folks, you know, have really their work cut off for them. So how can we work with them? How can we support them? How can we we engage with them. That's, I think, the theme of what Carl Gilbert wanted to do this weekend. In Haiti, for the most part, every crisis, every deficiency tends to spring up an industry. You all know what I'm talking about. With the quake, it has happened. And of course, it's incumbent upon us, it's incumbent upon the officials that are here to find ways to lessen that syndrome, to find ways to diminish the incidence of this unwanted industry that tend to spring up as a result of our deficiencies. For example, we know in Haiti, for a long time, we had a problem of water distribution. And we have a state company called CAMEP, responsible for the provision of water and distribution of same. But over the years, we have seen some parallel organizations and companies that have evolved, not so much to fix the deficiencies that may be inherent in CAMEP, but to basically offer services to affected population while the CAMEP problems continue. So we don't have running water coming to our house, we buy a truckload of water. That doesn't resolve the problem. And the same thing is done with the electric company and the provisions of electricity. But in my observation, I've noticed for a long time, the healthcare industry in Haiti, the healthcare provision, hasn't been functioning very well. Of course, the state has tried very much, but there has been a lot of weaknesses. But there hasn't been an industry that sprung up, so to speak, as a result of the difficulties that the state has with respect to healthcare provisions. Yes, we have seen NGOs coming from abroad, setting up shop and doing some work. We have seen private physicians setting up clinics and shops, doing things. But this really was addressing a niche that was already there. As somebody just said, the majority of the people, the majority of the population remains practically without service. And that is a reality. That is what I'm hoping the post-January 12 Haiti will address and will insist that we find ways to englobe and bring everybody under this umbrella. I know it's not going to be easy. I know the doctor who just spoke, Dr. Cadet, mentioned the necessity to have, for example, a healthcare system, a healthcare insurance program. It's going to be difficult, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. We can do it if we attempt to do it. The other thing I think it's important for us to mention, so that is difficult. So that is something that we need to address to see how we can perhaps meet halfway in terms of the public sector and the private individuals who may want to invest in healthcare in Haiti. We heard about the difficulties in terms of budgeting priorities. I submit to you there should not be such difficulties. Healthcare being what it is an obligation. It is a human right that we owe to the people. So when the budget is being worked on, when the budget is being discussed, Minister Larsen should not be pulling his hair to argue that he needs more than 300 million good. That should be obvious. That he has to have the funds. Otherwise, the responsibility that we put on his shoulders, he cannot carry it out. And we've heard over the years that the state was emasculated The state does not have the resources to carry supervising a bunch of foreign NGOs that are on the ground telling people to do left, to do right. No. The NGOs are necessary. They can be there. But they should be there on a complementary basis. So those are the issues.